Hey, everybody, welcome back into the shed. It's good to be here. It's been a while since we've laid down any recordings or anything back here. And I'm really excited today because I have with me Joan Petit, who I noticed was really interested about this. She's been posting stuff on social. But Joan is an awesome community advocate and former host of the Sprocket Podcast, which is really cool. So I'm really excited to have her in here. Joan, welcome into the shed. Your first time?
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be in your shed. It's such a great spot. And I'm so excited to talk to you because we've chatted before about, we should talk about this on a podcast, but this is the first time we're actually doing it. So I'm glad to be here. And this is such a juicy topic.
well, thanks for being willing to talk about it. I was thinking, you're one of the rare people in Portland that is willing to talk about this stuff online, not necessarily currently employed by any advocacy group or city agency. Although I should say you have been on various advisory committees related to transportation.
I think just one, just a parking task force.
That's right. Yeah, very intriguing Northeast, the Humboldt one, or the Boise
Elliott?
The
Elliott. The Elliott one, not the Boise one. That's a separate one. Although they're sort of combined now.
Yeah.
But right, I'm not a city employee.
Yeah.
Yep. Not a paid advocate or planner.
Yeah. Good. I
like bikes and I like local politics, I guess.
Hey, so do I. That's it. I mean, yeah. So we wanted to talk about the diverters in Northwest today. I think is it's Friday. It's the 2-week anniversary, the 2-week anniversary of when this thing hit. This diverter thing is basically a situation where we had city administrators with the Portland Police Bureau and this thing called Portland Solutions hatched up a plan. They say over a few years. I think what happened, where there were complaints about a couple diverters, one on Northwest Everett and 20th, the other one at Northwest 15th and Johnson. I have a feeling that those were pretty annoying to people in the community from NIMBY standpoint, neighborhood association.
To people who drive.
Yeah, to people who drive around. And I don't think the police necessarily have loved them all these years. They went in 4 or 5 years ago as part of the Northwest in Motion plan. So 2 Fridays ago is when the news really came out, because there was an internal email from this city administrative, it's like an office called Portland Solutions. It's got this thing called the Public Environment Management Office nestled underneath it, and a bunch of other things nestled underneath it.
PIMO? Are we calling it PIMO?
We're calling it PIMO. But I can't say PIMO first without saying.
No, you got to say what it is. And PIMO is within Portland Solutions.
Yeah, it's still.
Which is this office that Ted Wheeler set up when he was mayor, about 3 years ago, I think, right?
Yeah, I think this was when they were like, okay, so first when the pandemic hit, they couldn't address any of the homelessness encampments, livability stuff that was happening on the streets because of concerns like the CDC had put out a recommendation. And obviously they also wanted a political excuse to not have to deal with the issue, I think. But whatever. Right. They didn't touch anything on the street. Obviously, a couple years after the protests and the pandemic, things were looking pretty bad. So the Mayor Wheeler put together this thing through an emergency declaration, basically saying, look, we're doing graffiti cleanup, we're addressing homeless encampments, we're doing, other kind of crime issues and downtown storefronts being broken and petty theft, all from different places. Let's try to put it under one roof and get out of our silos. Here's an emergency declaration. Yeah. So that's kind of where this office germinated, and it's still here. And they've been, I think, operating with some success in getting things done in the city. They have this thing, part of it's called the Problem Solver Network, which is, I think, a lot more people are starting to learn about now as one of the impacts of all this stuff the last 2 weeks. But that's essentially, I think what they did, and I'm honestly still trying to figure out exactly how it works and what it is. But I think what they did, the way I think about it, is they created another layer of feedback. It reminds me of the neighborhood associations, but with none of the history, legacy, accessibility, standards, right?
Rules.
There's no checks and balances, rules, none of that. It's basically a group that they've picked. It includes, public safety partners, which can mean all kinds of things, including police and whoever else. They do have these regular meetings, but as people might have seen, you might have read too, but they have regular meetings, but they're not listed anywhere. You have to email something. And so it's been a very opaque, not super publicly accessible situation. So like I was saying before, the concerns from drivers, police not liking them certainly, and whoever else. I think now we have a city commissioner, Eric Zimmerman, who doesn't like them. So all this stuff starts simmering and then boiling, and then it gets to a point in their process that they're ready to make the changes.
Right.
Go on the street. Right. And so that was the email they sent basically to the District 4 city councilors and the deputy city administrator of public works, of which PBOT is nestled under the Transportation Bureau. That person's name's Priya Donapal, so she's the DCA of Public Works Service Area. She was on that email. Someone from the mayor's office was on the email. That's the other weird thing about this is these offices I'm talking about actually report right to the mayor. The city council is out of the loop completely, which we're going to hopefully talk about in a sec. But so that's how it came out. And then because it went to a District 4 councilor who is, concerned about this stuff, and I think, Councilor Mitch Green wants to be seen increasingly as a champion of transportation issues. He shared that email with me and basically said, I don't think he'll mind if I say this, but his forwarding message to me said, hey, Jonathan, thought you might want to know about this. It looks like an impending catastrophe.
Thank you, Councilor Green.
So that was
I really appreciate that he kicked this all off.
Yeah, he really did. I'm curious, if he wouldn't have done that and tried to fight it internally, they probably would have done it, and then I would have got messages from the community saying, hey, Jonathan, these diverters are gone. What's going on? It would have been a retroactive fight, I think.
Or maybe it would have been more like what happened with the Broadway bike lanes a couple of years ago, where they were kind of on the edge of doing it. I don't remember how that news came out a couple of years ago, but they were, although it's actually pretty easy to move diverters. I mean, a lot easier to move a couple concrete planters, basically, than what they were going to do on Broadway. Yeah, it's been so interesting because I think what is fascinating to me about this is that we're talking about essentially 3 or 4 concrete planters, right? But what this is now blowing up into is a question about the public process and public meetings and how the city gets things done and who has access to the city. And I think in retrospect, it's also making me wonder, and you and I chatted a little bit about this on Blue Sky, what else has this office been doing that we don't know about because there wasn't a journalist, there wasn't a counselor, there wasn't a bike advocacy organization. So now what we're seeing is like a lot of, they're not diverters. I mean, they're diverters, right? But now we're like, oh, have they been violating, public meeting laws? And this could potentially lead to government reform. So it's just been fascinating, just the volume of information that's come out. And I think what's so interesting is, Portland Solutions thought they had been working on this for like 2 years, right? And then to us, it's like, well, this is brand new. Right. This is brand new. And I take, it piqued my interest a little bit because I'm a season ticket holder to the Thorns games, and I take Northwest Johnson back and forth to get to Providence Park. So I knew exactly what stretch they're talking about, and I knew exactly what diverter they were talking about removing. And I go in Northwest Johnson from, basically you can go, from the Broadway Bridge basically to 18th or 19th and then go right over to Providence Park. And it's an amazing route. It's a fantastic greenway in large part because of those diverters. Right. So, so they're messing with the route I take. Oh, and then of course the one over on Everett.
Don't mess with Joan's route. Yeah. If anybody from the city's watching this.
But then the other thing, I went and stopped by the one on Everett when there was the protest, and I know you were there. And that one is like beautifully planted up with all these flowers. Why did they think they could take that out and nobody would notice? Somebody has spent time putting those like it's clearly something that the neighborhood right there cares about. It was beautiful, and like that is what we want our infrastructure to look like. So yeah, it's really all blown up because I think, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think what happened here is that they messed with the wrong people. They messed with bike folks who are well organized. I think this group has probably been doing a lot of stuff that's negatively impacted a lot of disenfranchised people who don't have voices, right? Like sweeping camps. There's been, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think you're right on that. It's interesting. You mentioned like, oh, they're just diverters, but it's not. I'm sure they thought that too. We should say that for folks who don't know, what these diverters do is they basically change a 2-way street for driving, and they create a 1-way for drivers, but you can still get by on a bike. So there's actually behind the diverter a bike lane. So it went from 2 ways into a residential street, greenways, to now behind the diverter it's like a bike lane. So it's a car-free lane. Very nice. It really does a lot to limit volume of drivers on a street, which is the whole entire purpose. They're there. They didn't just go in willy-nilly. And so the rationale for taking them out, which I don't think we mentioned, was this public safety thing, which anybody knows, it's just like the war on terror, the war on drugs. You can throw anything into this bucket of public safety, and everybody's just supposed to bow down. No. So, but that's what they said. The police apparently, this is, and I don't doubt that that's the case, that there's a lot of calls coming in on this corridor. Let's say there's a Fred Meyer, there's Cooch Park, which had been in the news for public drug use and crime, and folks hanging out. It's a park. People are supposed to hang out there anyway. So yeah, the police thought they had a good case saying, those diverters don't allow us to quickly patrol these areas. And then the one on Johnson, the rationale more specifically was, since it goes under I-405, a major freeway interstate, that somehow that made it unsafe. They've tried to say that they've gotten reports from bicyclists and pedestrians of assaults and things. And it's like, so that's what they thought. They thought they had this really good case for public safety, getting rid of a NIMBY thorn in the side that's been bubbling up at neighborhood association meetings and elsewhere. And then, yes, the complete underestimation of not just this community that cares about this stuff, but the underestimating like all the other issues this touches on. I think it was like, hubris, getting a little bit too seduced by their success in the past, and then pushing it a little bit too far. There's something materially different from, organizing a neighborhood to have, trash cans on every corner, which is that kind of stuff they do, or changing some streetlight bulbs to make sure it's lit, or whatever, getting rid of an eyesore that's just like maybe a pile of trash that no one's taken account, like getting that stuff. They're like, yeah, check the box. They were super excited. And I just think, like you said, first of all, they found out that you cannot mess with this community lightly. And also, right-of-way is a different ballgame. I'm telling you, I was thinking the other night about how many things that this same trajectory has followed over my career with BikePortland. And I'd love to kind of like put them all together. I think it's really interesting. I was just asked by a journalist working on a story about the Portland Art Museum. They're having a huge expansion open up later this summer. And I don't know if folks remember, but 8 years ago, same thing. Museum directors, again, museum people they're Portland Art Museum, been here forever. They just think they do whatever they want. They wanted to basically enclose what was a public plaza with their expansion of their museum, right?
That.
Got wind of it, went through the whole thing. It took them 7 or 8 months to re-engineer the design because they had to go to the bike advisory committee, listen to all that, right? And there were like tons of stories on BikePortland. Everybody mobilized and said, you can't close the plaza. But again, nobody expected that this slight decrease, or what they would think is a small decrease in people's mobility and access to the public right of way, they're like, who's going to care? We get to expand the museum. People do care. People do care. So that I think is, one of the lessons they learned. But gosh, there's like so many little aspects of this that are weird, and like it's part of that thing of just like I can't believe they even tried it. But then I can totally understand how these decisions got made to some degree, like understanding the internal bureaucracies. But so
I mean, there's like so many different angles you can go down with this. So one thing, first of all, is that as folks who are on bikes, we have so little space allocated to us. I mean, anybody who is listening to this and is riding a bike around knows this, right? We're riding in the door lane, we're next to cars, you see where the parking folks can tell you all about how much space cars have to park. There's so little space for us. So we feel very strongly about the spots that are easier for us to use. I have been riding my bike for transportation in Portland for 15 years now. I realize that it's like coming up to 15 years. And in many ways, it's great. And I am worried that I am going to get hit by a car every single time I'm on my bike. I remember when like a year or two after we all went home for the pandemic, when folks in cars were getting really aggressive, like I increased the amount of my life insurance because I was so stressed about how people were driving. And I'm always like trying to, and so I try to ride like anticipating, or like when I cross the street, I'm not going to assume that a car is going to stop at the red light. And so I think we are all so used to being so careful, and yet you still hear about people getting hurt and killed by cars all the time when they're just standing on the sidewalk, right? Like that just happened, or on bikes.
On their way to bridge pedal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's terrible. And so when we do have a little bit of space where we can like relax just a little bit, that feels a little bit safer for us. Yeah, we feel really strongly about it.
Well, tell me more about your feeling strongly. So right now, 2 weeks later, what is really emerging for you where you're just like, think you should focus as an advocate, or like where your anger is focused? Tell me like the balance between like the public safety thing, the fact that they're saying that their idea of public safety somehow should have precedence over what you just described, which is like this, I feel like a real flesh and bone life and death safety of being on a bike, or like is the governance stuff really intriguing to you? Or like where are you thinking in terms of your...
Well, so what is fascinating, and I think why this is playing out differently now, is because of charter reform, right? So we have a new form of city government now in Portland that I think is fantastic, and advocates were working on that for a long time. I mean, I remember elections many years ago where people were very frustrated with a commission form of government, and people were like, we have to do charter reform. We have to do charter reform. And folks were working on it for a long time. And so now we have this new form of government, and I feel like it's working. This is what I want.
Okay, so you see it as working.
Yes, absolutely.
I gotta say, initially when I was first processing what was going on, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not working. This is not good. They're gonna do this thing. But as time has gone on, I think that shifted a little bit. And I'm so glad you brought that up, the governance thing, and the difference between this form of government and the one we just had 7 months ago, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, which we also have an amazing test case with Southwest Broadway.
That's right.
We literally there's so many interesting comparisons and contrasts to that situation. You had people in a powerful back room, right, trying to get their business done without informing the community, taking away safety for cycling, making something materially less safe for road users that aren't in cars, not appreciating the background, right? So I think it's going to be fun. Or we could do it now, but eventually really look at the difference between how that one came out, how this one came out. What's fascinating to me is the lack of city council knowledge of this one, right?
Yeah.
Last time when you had a commission form of government, there was a one elected official, 1 out of 5, was in charge of this decision, the Transportation Bureau. As soon as I got wind that this was going on, which at that case it was similarly leaked by a city person. In that case, well, it was leaked by a city person. I'll just say that. But it was like everybody instantly knew. Commissioner Mingus Maps, like, you're in charge here. Let's all direct. When this one happened, I mean, it's still a little bit vague about who we go to. It's not city council. And one thing I realized after a few days this has happened is that councilors had no idea. They were all reading about it on BikePortland. So huge difference there, right?
Well, but I think also one of the differences that, I mean, okay, so before, whoever was the commissioner over PBOT wasn't somebody who necessarily had any interest in transportation infrastructure, right?
Or they could have just been handed the agents, the bureau, just on a whim, right? Exactly.
And so there wasn't a lot of time for them to build up momentum, even if they were really excited about it. Maybe they had other priorities.
Or to understand the community and like the nuances of why things are important or not.
And how many times did the city commissioner who was over PBOT go to the Bicycle Advisory Committee meetings? Like, maybe once every couple of years. I mean, it wasn't like they were there all the time. Last week, there were 3 city councilors at the Bicycle Advisory Committee fully ready to say, this isn't okay. We need to do better. And we are committed to making, I think Councillor Koyama Lane said that not a direct quote, of course, but that we should have data-driven decisions made in public. And it's like, thank you so much. That's Yes, exactly.
It's saying that you're reasonable to be upset. It's reasonable to be upset, which I think is super important.
Because they're upset too. And so even if they can't specifically unwind the clock to look at this, what they can do, and what it seems like they want to do, is take a big step back and say, why did this happen? What's going on here? And how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? So I don't actually think like it was better before, because Commissioner Mapps made this decision, and he from everything he said, he was appeasing business folks, business owners or property owners on the stretch. And, you know, those are folks in this town who have been used to being able to get things done by whispering in the ears of the mayor and other elected officials and not having to go through a public process like all of us normal folks, right? Well, now we have more normal folks who are the elected officials, who don't want to make those backroom deals.
And I think another interesting dynamic about having those three counselors, so it was Tiffany Kamalane, Councilor Samir Kanal, who's District 2, Kamalane's District 3, and then District 4, Mitch Green. District 3 Councilor Angelita Murillo would have been there. She was busy doing something else. We would have had a third of city council.
Yeah.
We have more that actually are in support of this, but I think she would have been there too. It would have been 4, would have been unprecedented. I don't think we've ever had 3, so that's obviously unprecedented. But the interesting dynamic to me was illustrated by Councilor Mitch Green, who spoke first at the BAC meeting, the Bike Advisory Committee. The first words out of his mouth, which I think is important, were, "This is the new form of government working well. This is city government working well." Why do you think he said that? I think part of this dynamic is that their understanding as the first council to sit in this form of government, that if the sort of PR, if the brand, if the narrative among Portlanders writ large is that this form of government is not working well, they're going to have a harder time, getting reelected. They're going to have a harder time they want to be part of a successful new form of government, right? And I think they read the tea leaves right and understood the optics of this situation, the way it was going, that if those diverters would have been changed and removed, or that all that stuff, if that plan would have gone ahead, there would have been a lot of Portlanders that they care about as electeds, right? Again, if it was, it's about who they feel they represent. The more they're part of the progressive caucus, that's what they're calling themselves, Peacock. So they were hearing loud and clear that people that they care about, voters who are going to vote for them, thought that this was really frustrating, and we're getting angry and thinking like, what the heck's going on? I thought we, had this form of government, so stuff like this couldn't happen. So I think Councilor Green has this vested interest to make sure to stop this. He's also a champion for good transportation policy, which I think is, he's talking the right way about that. But I do think he was motivated too by saying, and the first words out of his mouth, just to nip it in the bud, was like, the new form of government's working. Here we are. As if to push back on people that were starting to go, what the heck? How did this happen?
Well, and I think, so we just reorganized our city government. It takes time for them to figure out how to organize themselves. That's not bad. I mean, I think we're not used to I think at a federal level, we're very used to now seeing government changing itself in real time. But let's not even go there. But
the norms don't exist anymore, Joan.
But like within the city, we were used to things going a certain way, and maybe you have different people, but in general, there was a certain process. And what's happened now is that we have a new form of city government, and they have to figure out how to do it. And that's beautiful. Like, that is not bad or a problem. We don't want it to be like totally set when they all get into office last winter. They have to take some time to figure out. I mean, we saw all these I know I'm one of the wonky people who watched some of those first meetings where they were having conversations trying to figure out who was going to be council president and all that. But this is the stuff of democracy. It's beautiful. It's like it takes them a while to figure out. And right now they're trying to figure out how many committees to have, more or less. They all kind of want to be on all the committees. Everybody wants to have input into everything.
Right. I'm like you. I like the messy part too. I feel like that's like real.
Yeah.
It's like authentic democracy in motion.
And it's good to be able to see that just because we've always had something doesn't mean that we can't change the way we do it and try to get better.
Yeah. And speaking of like democracy in motion and being excited as like a political nerd, someone who loves it, that meeting, that Bike Advisory Committee meeting, not only did Councilor Green bring up this idea of changing city code, right, which is an idea it first came up from a local advocate, Joe Perez. I'm sure he's not going to mind me saying that. He's one of these people that loves reading all the planning documents and looking at every tiny little word. And he noticed in the new city code, which passed with the form of government change, there's the title, the part of it, the chapter about transportation has this thing called road authority. And it says clearly that city council is the road authority, right? And then it basically says they can delegate to the city administrative wing to implement city plans. So that bounced around a little bit, and I didn't really grab it and really make it part of the coverage, because I was like, I didn't want to distract the community and getting down this rabbit hole of city code, because I'm just like, we got to save the diverters. Let's keep the narrative strong and let's focus. But it's cool because I think Joe communicated that to like Councilor Koyama Lane. She's obviously a close ally and works with Councilor Mitch Green a lot. So and then there you saw it at the BAC meeting just Tuesday night. He brings up this idea of the code change. So that's like democracy in action. He's saying they're definitely going to try to make a proposal to change the code to make it even more clear that the city administrative wing cannot make changes to the road without first talking to council, right? But also what happened at that meeting is this resolution. It was clear, apparently there's some communication between Mitch Green's staff and the Bicycle Advisory Committee membership that said at that meeting, they had to draft a resolution that's going to be at council, I'm assuming soon in the coming days and weeks, And I've never seen that before. I've been going to the BAC meetings for 20 years, and they've never done that. The strongest thing they can do, which is part of constant grumbling that happens with that committee, is like, do they have any teeth or not? They can write a letter. That's usually what they do. And like, honestly, in today's environment, the zone is so flooded with information. Who cares about another letter?
A firmly worded letter
exactly.
doesn't do a whole lot.
It's a laughing stock.
Yeah.
But what happened Tuesday night was really cool because they were literally in real time with the staff liaison from the city, typing furiously. They were talking and out this resolution, dictating it in real time, and it's done now. The print basically was dry that night. There was a mandate essentially from the chair of that committee to say, we're going to have a resolution done tonight. And it's going to, now it's like in Mitch Green's office, it's going to go through the city legal process to become a real resolution. And it essentially says, I mean, I have the language here, essentially just says, we're opposed to the diverters. There must be a public process for this. Don't screw with neighborhood greenways ever again. That's what the resolution says. So that's pretty exciting from, the standpoint of just, wanting to see this government work and seeing how politicians can respond in real time. That's another one of the impacts that are going to come out of this.
Yeah. And I think, so then one of the other directions that is interesting about all of this is with the change in the city government is that Mayor Wilson, we have a mayor who had as his main platform the idea of, or the pledge to end not homelessness, but unsheltered homelessness. And I think there are some folks who didn't hear like that he was talking about ending unsheltered homelessness, meaning let's get a lot of shelters, right? And so he's made this pledge. They've opened some shelters. Well, what's been going on in Northwest, and also part of this, right, is that they were wanting to put shelters all over the city, because if there are going to be shelters, they should be in every neighborhood, not just the poor neighborhoods, which typically get the burden of these sorts of services. So they wanted to put a shelter in Northwest, and a lot of the neighbors there did not like it, and were pushing back pretty hard. And so I'm also thinking about some of the other infrastructure that came out. In the Pearl, there was like a pedestrian plaza that they just ripped out and reverted to be a street. Our friend Ian McKenzie, gay icon Ian McKenzie, as the Portland Mercury called him. That was so wonderful. He's an architect and he's lived in that area and he spent a lot of time there. He was writing a lot about this, about how they took out a very successful pedestrian plaza. So all this stuff, all this removal of pedestrian and bike-friendly infrastructure was happening or was in process of being ripped out. And so then when you look at those angry neighborhood meetings and Mayor Wilson wanting to get a shelter in there, and then there being this group that's having all these meetings that are not public. There's no agenda for them. We don't know who attended. We don't know which members of the public or businesses. We don't know what city staff were there. What were the deals that were struck?
Yeah, I've heard that. This quid pro quo of like, stop opposing my shelters and I'll do your bidding on your annoying things that bother you when you drive around, like these silly plazas and diverters. Yeah. I've heard that. That would take a lot more work to really be able to confirm.
Some public records requests, yeah.
Possibly. I mean, in this case, like you said, there are none, and I've seen that from the public records person that said, sorry, there are no meeting minutes, there are no agendas, there's no attendance at these.
Yeah, so you'd have to do like.
But also like it's, and like I haven't really elevated that theory. Because when I'm reporting on stuff like this, I'm super careful to never have anything come from BikePortland that can be easily refuted by the other folks. Because what that would do is it notches down like the credibility. And when you notch down the credibility of this opposing voice that's coming out, you lose, the pressure doesn't build quite as well. So like in a perfect sense, when these stories come up, keep building and I try to only put out stuff that I can verify as fact or that's just materially obvious.
Right.
That way, as the pressure ratchets up, nobody from like the side that's doing the thing I don't want them to do or we don't want them to do, they cannot refute or like say anything to minimize that pressure that's building, right? So as soon as you say something about a conspiracy theory about a quid pro quo, the mayor's office is going to go, oh God, look at all the BikePortland people think it's because of the shelters, they're off their rocker. You know what I mean? So
yeah, there's what you're going to do and say as a journalist, and yeah, you should absolutely be sticking to what are verifiable facts. And then there's, what happens in the comments section where we all go crazy with our little theories.
Okay, I gotta say about the comments section. I love that in that BAC meeting, Councilor Koyama Lane said she's been reading all the comments. Right? There's not a lot of other outlets that really have comments anymore, and especially ones that don't read.
I was thinking about that. I think it's only one of the like well-moderated, not totally bonkers comment sections in the entire city for city politics and issues.
Maybe, there's some others that maybe people read. I think Willamette Week still has comments. I don't know how much quality they are, but I mean, I don't know.
Maybe there's some like okay spots on Reddit. I don't know.
I think Reddit's cool, but yeah, no. So I think I've been thinking about, again, this is not the first time that I've been involved, and BikePortland has been involved with something where we're like overturning something bad. This has happened many times. But hearing Councilor Koyama Lane specifically call out in that meeting, in that moment, that she's reading all the comments, it gives me kind of an excuse to remind the community that, and I don't know if this is obvious to people, it's been obvious to me, but like the BikePortland comment section is essentially like its own advocacy group.
Yes.
It's its own advocacy voice. So that means everybody in the community that leaves comments on there you are a part of a thing that is actually important and influential in local politics, getting things done, people read those comments, which I would also tell the community, don't screw that up.
Yeah. When I leave a comment there, I am very aware that even if the other commenters don't like what I have to say, there are people reading that who will never comment or respond, who I might not ever know, but who might see, oh, okay, yeah, there's another perspective on this issue.
Well, thanks for doing that. I think there's been so many people over the years, not so many, but I know there are people in this community that, I don't know, wear it as a point of pride that they're not in the BikePortland. There's also like a negative connotation to the BikePortland comments as if they're like unhinged or whatever, any other stereotype you want to throw out. And I've always like, so if you're too cool, if you're above mixing with like the community in the agora, which it really is, it's a public space. I don't, we've had all sorts of conversations about how to moderate it and how strong I should not let people say whatever, blah, blah, blah. But if you're too high and mighty to be a part of that, like, then you're, like I said, I think it's really its own advocacy voice. Like you should go in there, I think, and bend it to your will more. Leave a comment. I mean, I appreciate folks like you that are willing to go in there, even if you don't think it's maybe the most popular opinion. But those are the comments when I see those are the ones I'm going to make sure that necessarily don't have a huge, terrible reaction. Right. So I think we're getting off topic a little bit in terms of digressing into this stuff, but I want to talk about really like the street itself. Right. And like, what would you see as some of the alternatives? Like, let's say in an alternative universe, these folks who were not super cool with the diverters had come to the Bike Advisory Committee a year and a half ago when they first started getting this, 2 years ago when they first had this idea. What do you think, given the way they're engineered now and the design of what they look like, you know them, it's on your route, what are some other outcomes that could have solved, made it good for both sides here that would have worked?
Well, one thing that Ian McKenzie was talking about is how that underpass area, right? So that's the one on Johnson and what is it, 15th?
Yeah, between 15 and 16.
Yeah. That area has been rough and untidy for a long time, predating that diverter, right? And so some of the solutions I've seen people put in there is putting in lights. But really what we're talking about is that there are folks who live there and are trying to find shelter. And that is like the bigger problem in our city right now. What are the solutions to the infrastructure? I mean, the solutions to a lot of these things are like these much bigger systematic problems. But what could we do? Could we put lights up there? Could we make it? I mean, I would like to see more totally car-free streets. What if it was a totally car-free area except for emergency vehicles, right? So it's not that it's one way, it's that it's basically only bikes and, scooters, pedestrians, whatever. Plus, then when the police or an ambulance needs to go up and down it, they can too. What about totally cutting it off? Now, I don't think that that would involve some people maybe trying to figure out new ways to get places. I think businesses think that would be bad, even though I think we actually know that can often increase traffic to businesses. There are, I think, other ways they could have solved these problems.
And one of the things I've never even really mentioned yet, like in the coverage, but it's so sort of maddening that they feel like, and there was just yesterday, we finally heard from the police bureau. Again, I got that leak. That's not anywhere else. The police bureau came out and tried to lay out their rationale about patrolling and how they actually called it a shield that benefits, offenders. And these other kind of, what do they call it? A tactical disadvantage by having these in the road. Again, they can go around them. There's room. People do it all the time. Drivers do it all the time. But what is super interesting to me is that we have precedent in this city when there are concerns about crime, concerns about a high activity of stuff that the cops are interested in, shootings, whatever. Twice I can think of off my head where they've added anti-car infrastructure.
Yes.
Mount Scott Arleta, right? They closed an entire slip lane, made it a public plaza. It's beautiful. I did a whole video about it. It was a whole thing. They worked with the Parks Bureau. They went out. They had a few extra patrols for a while. They did some of those temporary barricades that were just the signboards. You couldn't go down certain streets. And there they were really trying to target like drive-by shooting and just using cars to commit crimes. Okay, cool. They added anti-car infrastructure. They didn't open it up so that the police in their cars could chase these people faster, right?
No, they wanted to slow traffic down.
They wanted to slow traffic down and not allow people to use the streets in that way. The other one that I'm thinking about is Dawson Park.
Yeah.
Right off of Dawson Park. Dawson Park's been an issue for the police for a long time. There's a whole history there. It's a place where a lot of Black Portlanders have always historically been and are still there. And there's all these things going on there. There was a little grocery store right there that was doing a lot of illegal stuff. Okay. So they had a lot of problems with street drug dealing right there at that block. They went in and literally put hundreds of those plastic delineators and plastic curbs so that cars couldn't access that at all because people were pulling over and doing their business. And like, if I'm in a cop car, that's really hard to move around that area, right? So it just doesn't match up with like, it's clear that that's not like a standard or, normal guidance. They just are coming up with these things to try to get these specific diverters out and make it in a way that's like, they think is going to be politically palatable.
And it's so interesting that you brought up these examples. I was thinking of that of times when we have when we've basically slowed down car traffic in order to make it safer or better. And
right in front of Jefferson High School, too, is another example. They did that same thing. Yeah.
So I live pretty close to Dawson Park, and I happen to know that some of my neighbors who live near the spot where they put up those plastic wands, they were asking the city and PBOT to do that for so long before it did it because, they had the, the Mount Scott example of and of that being something that I think Commissioner Hardesty did. And so there were some of my neighbors wanted that on that street too. And it took them forever to do it. And it was interesting because I wondered, I was sort of like, I wonder if they had gone to like Portland Solutions, if that could have worked. But they put that in, and they sort
maybe
of
the Broadway thing was from Portland Solutions.
Yeah,
so anyway,
So they put that in. It's still there, and while it didn't remove like the drug dealing from
no, it did not.
Dawson Park, it did kick it off of that corner, right? So it did mean that corner where the church is super different now. So in that case, adding some infrastructure and making it a lot narrower. Yeah, improved what the neighbors were looking for.
We don't even have to like advocate that is the good one of the better ways to approach this. You could also go the other direction and say there's literally no professional best practice anywhere, no research, nothing that would ever say making it easier for police officers to drive their cars through a few blocks is good for public safety, community viability, anything like that. I would love someone to try to find that study. It's just not there. It goes against all the ways we look at making a city. Like, there's a whole industry called CPTED, community protection through environmental design, I think is what the thing is. And anyway, that's all about making good public space so that it becomes more vibrant and more a place that the community can actually thrive in. And literally, like, they're saying to rip out the stuff and make it easier to drive. So makes no sense. I wonder what is going to happen now. We're in a pause. I think it's one of the interesting things to me is how reluctant the mayor is, or even the city administrative wing, how reluctant they are to just give up. And they will not give up. There's been no apologies. In Southwest Broadway, we had an apology pretty quickly from the director of PBOT, I think, who got thrown under the bus by the commissioner. I think that's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
And on this one, I think the reason why they're still going on this pause thing, and every time they've mentioned a pause, they've also, the next sentence has been, we are still very concerned about the livability and we must do something. Even DCA Donna Paul at the BAC, or just yesterday at City Council, mentioned it. She was very quick to say that they still are urgently going to address. The reason for that is, my theory is that this PMO thing, this Portland Solutions, these problem solver network thing, their entire brand is based on getting stuff done quickly. They've never failed. Everything they've tried to do, they've pretty much been able to do. And I think that's part of why they walk around, with their chests puffed out so much, and probably why they got a little bit seduced by that and went a little too far in this case. But they've never really failed to meet I think they have like a 2-week threshold.
Yeah.
It's this 2-week timeline.
So it's a real threat to their brand too. Taylor Griggs, former BikePortland writer, Taylor Griggs had a fantastic piece of reporting in the Portland Mercury this week where she, looked into this, right? And it was so interesting, first of all, to see that office, when Wheeler started it, that he said it was specifically to give business a way to interact with the city, right? Now, they now say neighbors, residents, et cetera.
Community concerns, yes,
it started out as business. And also, right, there was some directive from the head of that office saying city staff must respond to issues raised in these meetings within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. How long did it take to get the Northwest in Motion plan approved? Years. Yep. Right. And so in 2 weeks, they're ready to make things happen. So they have some, it's like Domino's. If you don't get your pizza in time, I don't know. What do they get? True. If you don't get your diverters removed within 2 weeks, you get, I don't know. I don't know what they say.
I literally think this is one of those things where, the people like Ann Hill, who's the director of PMO, Skylar Brocker-Knapp, who's the director, who's in charge of, Portland Solutions, the folks around this stuff, I think, have a sense that this is going to notch them down in terms of their ability to go to their communities and all their public safety partners and, swing their bat like they used to, do it. Like, this shows that, they've actually overstepped and that this is a real chink in their armor, which I think that's why they are so reluctant to just say, okay, let's just, you guys tell us what kind of process you want, or just say, hey, we're going to give $100,000 to PBOT so they can do their normal thing, which would be another way for them to just walk away from this. Just hand it over to PBOT and say, PBOT, whenever you can you please look into this? Because I don't think it should become a priority for PBOT either. They got other stuff they're doing. But yeah, I think that's why they don't want to capitulate fully, because it would, like I said, it would sort of break that record. They've been undefeated to some degree, but today we're on the 2-week thing and they're not going to get it done. And frankly, they're not going to get it done for many more weeks unless there's some grand compromise that gets formed. I don't see that happening. I just think that now the cat's out of the bag. Initially there wasn't a lot of attention. It took a couple of days for the local media to get wind of this, but now it is all over the local news. OPB's done it. The Oregonian published a letter from Sarah Risser from Families for Safe Streets. It's been on Reddit, KGW Coin. KPTV has done 2 good stories. Northwest Examiner even covered it. So it's out there. The politics for Mayor Wilson, who's really where the buck stops with this, have reached a point where I still can't see that he could give them permission to go forward unless something really dramatically changes.
Well, he's going to lose a lot of trust, I think, with folks in Portland if he pushes through something that was sort of decided in this very backroom sort of way that so many people don't want. And I do think the bigger thing here is that all this sunshine now is shining on this office. And we saw over the course of this week that they added the meeting times to the website. And if you look at them, they're all like daytime meetings. Like these are clearly not things designed for public availability. They didn't put the links. I mean, I think there's going to be some public meeting conversations that happen. I think and hope. I mean, I don't know all the things that office has gotten done, and probably they don't want to tell us, which is weird.
Some of it's on their website. They have like a little list of things they've done. But
but I think things are going to change for them now because it seems to me, well, okay, so it can either be true that they did a public process, or it can be true that those meetings aren't subject to public meeting rules. Like you can't have both. You can't say our meetings aren't open to the public, but we've done this public process for 2 years. Right. Like pick one.
Yeah, right.
And actually, I think neither is true.
Yeah.
So I think things are going to change because I mean, did Wheeler put that in when charter reform was coming through and he was trying to get ahead of it? Now, like, I mean, I don't know what happened, but now the conspiracy theories could just, keep going. But it's like, this just isn't how it's going to happen anymore. And it's very interesting to me that we're not hearing anything from the mayor on this. And I guess Administrator Jordan's maybe on vacation or something this week. And
well, he's on vacation, but he also issued a memo with his name on it Wednesday, right? Or Tuesday. No, yeah, Tuesday, right before the VC meeting.
Yeah, and that thing was, I'm not going to say it was exactly a word salad, but it was a real cut and paste of reasons and motivations that did not really add up to what they were saying the decision should be.
And you notice it also did not say anything about a pause.
Oh.
There was nothing in there saying, it basically just restated, it fleshed out the points that had already been made in these like internal emails and stuff that had been reported out. There was nothing in there acknowledging any kind of misstep or saying, we would love to hear from the community a little bit more. But by the way, here's our rationale. Right. That part wasn't in there, that we want to hear from the community. Yeah. So I thought that was super interesting. It shows you how quickly things were moving on this.
Right.
They were hoping in some weird parallel universe, maybe because he's on vacation, maybe they're totally tone deaf and don't understand this community. I think maybe both of those are true. They thought that memo was going to basically shut everybody up. But then literally, I think within 24 hours, we got the announcement of a more strong pause from the mayor's office. So you basically had the mayor saying pause on a memo written by the city administrator. Like, right? There's some, I think even within the city administrator mayor's office, people are looking at each other going like, shit, who's supposed to deal with this?
Who's going to own this?
Yeah.
Who's going to own this? There's a mess now.
Yeah.
Whose mess is it?
Nobody wants to own it. And frankly, like it's been super, I'm really looking forward to talking to the mayor. I have a ride scheduled with him later this month.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. And then I'm actually interviewing him at Bike Happy Hour on September 3rd. Everybody should come. It's going to be live in the plaza. And it's so funny because before all this came down, I literally, as I start to think about how to prep for that and make sure it's a good conversation, I'm like, gosh, I kind of have a really good, rapport with Keith, Mayor Keith Wilson. I've known him for years. It's all good. But I don't want to just sit up on the stage and yuck it up and be two dudes talking about biking, right? I'm not interested in that. But I'm like, what am I going to talk to him about? I really got to find some things. So I've been listening to his interviews and and then this comes up. And now I'm like, I am so surprised. Like, Mayor Wilson and your staff, if you're listening to this, I do not understand why you're being so evasive of me and BikePortland. It makes absolutely no sense. BikePortland was the first place the mayor ever gave a public speech, right? Obviously, they understand what's going on here with the community. They have been running away from commenting to me. I mean, I had a request to comment for them, and then I read a comment from the mayor at another outlet. Like, frankly, as a journalist, that is like the worst thing you can do when it comes to comms. I'm waiting for your comment. I asked you first, and I see it somewhere else. Don't do that to me. Like, I don't like that. And then, just never answering my questions. I had a whole list of questions that are still completely unanswered 2 weeks in, right? So I don't understand. So much of this could have been changed. I think we wouldn't be sitting here right now if the mayor would have understood, or someone on his staff would have understood how bad this would turn out, which some of us knew basically immediately. If they would have embraced and just give me a phone call, that's something that I've kind of like taken pride. Well, it's kind of tricky, but over the years, when these things happen, I'm always trying to find a way, for the most part, unless it's like a real evil bad thing, I'm trying to find a way for the power structure to get a win and have our community come out. Yeah, build bridges. And so I'm always willing to have strategy phone calls, which I get as I've been around longer. It's harder for people to understand that.
No,
like,
I get it.
I'm not always trying to get a story out.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm not always trying to like go get a story and say you're doing something wrong. That's not what I'm about. I'm about getting our community wins, right? Literally, no one has called me. Priya Donapal hasn't called me. No one from PBOT's called me. No one from the mayor's office has called me. I'm sorry, but like they know that I'm not like just a normal journalist that won't have those conversations, because I've had those conversations for 20 years. Like I will literally talk to them off the record, give them what I know about the community. What can we do here? How can I make it so that you don't look like you've got mud in your face, but things are going to be okay? Like let's figure this out, right? Like maybe I'm too Pollyanna thinking that can happen anymore, but it's a little disappointing that the lack of communication has been super annoying.
So who are the constituents that they're serving in this case? Like who are the people whose calls they are taking right now?
Well, good point. Yeah.
And I
haven't heard many people supporting their plan publicly, which is
right, but it's probably some of these folks who've been going to these meetings.
Sure. But that's my whole point, is that you cannot.
They're like in crisis mode, trying to figure out how do we do this thing that we said we told this group of people we would do it, and now it's actually incredibly unpopular with this other group.
This is a very common thing in the bike-lash world, in the bike advocacy world.
Yes.
And it's why I've always said and always would love if there was these folks that don't want these things, whether it's like a road diet or whatever, new bike lanes that you don't like, please, I wish there was an advocacy group that could, just say exactly why they don't like those things, lay it out in an argument, right? Because I think for our stuff, our argument's going to win, right? But those things don't exist. And in this situation, it's a very similar situation. I would love if someone was to come forward and try to explain why you want to make these changes in a way that, we could refute. They have only because of pressure had to do that. Everybody panned C.A. Jordan's memo. That was not a good memo, full of holes. And then this recent one with the police coming out with their case. I think this deputy, who was it? The Central Precinct Commander, Brian Hughes, thought, I'm going to come in here and get us out of this jam. I'm going to lay out the case. Everybody's going to just take it. No, people didn't like that. And there's a lot of really reasonable comments protesting that. So again, it's like, where I would love some voices that support this that are maybe not in the power structure, just regular Portlanders. Let's go. Tell us why you like this plan. Let's have a conversation. But we can't live in a city where that we have to be on defense only, and that folks that want something that isn't good or aligned with our values and goals can happen. We are not going to live in that city. And that's why I wish the mayor's office understood that a week and a half ago, and we wouldn't have to go through this whole process. Yeah,
it's been a real mess, and I think it's super interesting and notable that somebody from Portland Solutions was going to go to the Bicycle Advisory Committee meeting and then didn't.
Right.
And I mean, is this the kind of situation where somebody's going to lose a job or they're going to do some restructuring? I'm not advocating for any of that. I don't think I understand enough about what happened, but part of me is wondering if Mayor Wilson is actually still going to go and talk to you in September.
Oh, he will.
He will. Do you know I took the Peapod Traffic and Transportation class with him? He was in my class.
Oh, really?
I did that a few years ago. Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I was thinking about that last night. I was just talking to my wife actually about how it's going to be interesting. Now we're going to have something fun to talk about, and the idea that he would not come now is, I would lose a lot of respect for Mayor Wilson as a politician because that would be the worst possible decision to back out of something I've publicly talked about just because of some little mess you got yourself into.
Well, and to be clear, it's not like I think that's going to, I'm just wondering, it does seem like they don't really want to answer.
Nobody wants to answer for this.
Questions, very reasonable questions, and they don't want to answer them.
And the fact that they didn't, I don't want to sound like, but like I've never not had reasonable questions on an important issue ignored. And that's what happened. I had my questions ignored. Portland Solutions was working on them for like a day and a half, and I was getting a little bit frustrated because it was taking too long. And I'm like, sorry, but this is like, you guys should be addressing these questions because this is like an evolving story. I follow up with the person at Portland Solutions I was talking with. He said, oh yeah, we're working on them. We're going to get you an ETA when they get them back, no problem. And then I asked him, so where are those answers? And he said, sorry, we're not dealing with this anymore. This touches many bureaus. Now you need to go ask the mayor's office. The person literally told me this, if you want these questions answered, go talk to Cody Bowman, the mayor's comms guy or comms person. Go talk to the spokesman, ask him these questions. So that's like super rude. It's like, bro, you should have just forwarded my questions and had a little handoff to the mayor's office and said, hey, I'm talking to Jonathan, right? Don't then make me go do the work. Like, that's kind of annoying. So I did. I went and I said, hey, Cody, guys, everybody, I've been waiting for these questions. And I got a reply back from the mayor's office saying, we're not going to answer your questions for now.
Oh, so they
just did not answer my questions. This is
bad.
And this is days after the first time they said they were going to decline to comment. And I gently replied on my email. I said, are you sure the mayor doesn't want to comment? His office is overseeing all this decision making. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me, but I think it's enough. I just think the mayor's office is super busy. They think this is just a couple traffic diverters. Like, who the hell cares? Like, they're busy meeting with the NBA commissioner and like getting the mayor's unsheltered homelessness plan going and who knows what else. They thought this was just like a little spat. Portland Solutions take care of it. It went south, and now I think, for whatever reason, he's been reluctant to really step in. If I'm him, I've done a video already saying, hey, everybody, let's chat about these diverters a little bit. I heard from Jonathan that, and by the way, blah, 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 yuck us up a little bit. He's really good at that. Yeah. He's got a really great little charm. And then just talk about the diverters. Say, hey, yeah, I'm working on this. I think one thing that could come out, and from a governance standpoint, and I'm hoping that the mayor uses this situation and uses it as leverage to redo some of the stuff around Portland Solutions, make some tweaks, make some changes. I think that'd be a really smart way for him to come out of this ahead by saying, this whole thing, wow, it's great to hear all this feedback. We had no idea that it would be this, charged and everybody would be so, concerned. It's great. This is the Portland way. By the way, here's a few tweaks I wanted to make as Mayor Wilson, right? Because he could say, look, I didn't set this office up like this. He could wipe his hands and say,
oh, right.
This was created before I inherited this office. It looks to me now, as I look back, gosh, I've been traveling. I didn't have a chance. I'm looking at all this and I'm thinking, hey, I think we could change this. I think from now on, these problem solver meetings are going to be in the evening. Here's how the public can interface with them. And by the way, this is what the problem solver network is. It does X, Y, Z. Sorry, folks didn't know. By the way, I'm going to be adding this person to the staff who's from my office, right? Like, there are little things he can do to tweak that office to show that, he's acknowledged that it's not running the way it should, and that, he can come out and tell the community, look, I made some changes. I hope you're okay. And most people are reasonable and say, yeah, okay, we get it. That's cool. This was a mistake. Let's move on.
I think they also could come out and say, okay, wow, we didn't really realize how important these diverters were. We to some important stakeholders who we neglected to consult. And then throw us some bones. Be like,
you want something else.
Yeah, give us something else or something. Tell us what you're going to, yeah.
Well, I think they have, they have given a lot to the community already, or we've earned, I think, as a community, like we've been listing all the things, you know, that have come out of this. I mean, even just having those champions on city council step up and really become engaged is really, really important. You can never count on political support, but the fact that we have more than a third of council, I'm willing to say, I mean, they've publicly 5 of them have stated, you know, opposition to the city's plan. 5. That's, you know, and I think as this has gone on, and that was like a week and a half, that was a while ago. So I think as this has gone on, I bet if we were to really talk to them, we'd be at a majority of the 12 on city council that are opposed to the city's plans and are frankly pissed that they weren't looped in, right? So that's a huge thing to have all this on the radar, to have that bike advisory committee be so well, you know, attended, and to have just amazing testimony. The testimony at that meeting was also really important because it was really good testimony. Nobody really got angry, which fine. I don't want to, like, I'm not one to tone police. I don't never tell people how to do their activism. I think it's a very personal endeavor, but from having city council people there, and I know having all the city administrative people listening in on Zoom, it was good. The testimony was very good quality. They saw that it wasn't a bunch of unhinged cycling activists that want to throw bricks through windows. It was regular Portlanders. One of them, actually, I think the strongest testimony came from this woman who stood up, who lives there and drives there. Had actually been victim of a bias crime in the neighborhood. She's a black woman. Someone said some really vile things to her. She had a role in making the garden and said that the garden and the diverters really pulled her. So after that bias crime, she reverted into her house and didn't really want to come out in her community. But then once she got involved with the diverter, helped plant the garden, it really brought her out. And she was talking about how it's built all this community and people talk by the diverters and all this stuff. Really powerful. I had it all recorded and had a video up, but then it was some privacy stuff, so I ended up taking it all down. But the people saw that, you know. I mean, like the counselors saw that, and other good testimony. So kudos to, you know, the BAC really stepped up for hosting that forum in a really good way. And I also want to make the point too, from the advocacy response perspective. There were 4 groups that really mobilized, right? Families for Safe Streets was a local chapter of a larger national organization, Victims of Traffic Violence. There's a local chapter. Family for Safe Streets, Bike Cloud PDX. There was Strong Towns, and there was Bike Bus PDX, right?
Oh, the Bike Bus folks too, right?
So 4 advocacy groups mobilized. They got people down to the diverters for like the occupation, and just, you know, there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff, as you know, with these advocacy groups, stuff that they do. They encourage people to email, all these things. What struck me about that is like, it was all grassroots. There was not one paid staff person among those 4 advocacy groups, which I just think really speaks to where we're at in Portland right now. And like what I think is kind of one of the things that's special about this community is how we can, you know, when we work together and, you know, we don't need some big multi-million-dollar nonprofit representing us. And, you know, that was pretty amazing. These are 4 grassroots groups that work together collaboratively to like kind of make all this happen. I thought that was really cool and worth noting.
Yeah, that is great. I wish though, well, I wish that we could all get together somehow and pay somebody to be doing some of this work too. Because just think of how much stronger we could be then. But that's a different issue.
Well, yeah, I will make the point that, like, I mean, I guess I get paid. I mean, that's the thing.
Well,
it's
sure,
like, and it, you know, I don't do this a lot, but like at Bike Happy Hour, I went on this whole speech, which I don't usually do during open mic, but it was right after all this was happening. This was just 2 days ago, and I was telling people, like, I hope you understand that, like, I'm a full-time community advocate who uses journalism in the best interest of this community. Which I just figured out recently, folks, that like that's how I describe myself. I'm a community advocate, uses journalism to get what's best for this community. So that's what people pay for when they, you know.
And you're the linchpin in this. I think without BikePortland and what it has been over how many years now? 20th happy anniversary.
Thanks.
With that is the platform where this information, where you sharing this information is what gave folks a place to learn about it and talk about it. And so thank you. I mean, people are doing incredible work, but having a person in this town who has a platform like BikePortland and who is paying attention to transportation issues, both locally and regionally, is so important for us in getting these things done. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think so. I mean, right, there are these 4 groups, but then there's also this really important platform.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem situation. But yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that's really what this thing is built for. I mean, I like to say that, like, I don't do the advocacy, I just make the advocacy stronger, and that's what I've always done.
The existence of it is the advocacy.
No, absolutely. I mean, in a sense that, like, you know, if you're an advocate working with a group or an activist, whatever, you know, like the good ones know how to take the opportunities created by BikePortland and help bring them down the field, to bring them home, right? Yep. And there have been groups over years that don't understand that. It's like, I'm serving you up this amazing opportunity to help the community. You just have to act, and we have to work together, and blah blah blah, and we can be strategic. But I mean, it has been really actually pretty gratifying these last couple of weeks. Like, yeah, and especially in the 20th year when I've been thinking more about, like, you know, what the heck I've been doing all this time, and realizing, like, this is what we built this plane exactly for this reason, and now we get to just jump in and fly. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's what I'm trying to, I don't talk about it a lot, but like, that's what people do when they put $5 a month, $10 a month into the site, is that they are paying for a full-time community advocacy journalist person that is going to watch this stuff. And, you know, I just got done covering the state legislative session and had tons of people saying how much they appreciated that coverage, right? And then this thing comes up, and it's like, you know, when things are quiet, I think people maybe just kind of forget or take BikePortland for granted. But as soon as some stuff hits the fan and I'm able to spend like every minute focused on it, then we see the impacts, you know, like once I get my teeth into something, like I will just stick with it until we get to the point where I feel like we can take a little rest, which I don't know. I think Bike Loud did they had a little party Wednesday down at the Diverters with Connor Lennon, the person who is occupying, who's awesome activist from New York. So I think that says something. New Yorkers are just amazing. But I was like, I think it's a little too premature. I don't want to celebrate yet. Obviously, the stuff that's happened is already in stone. Like the more light on this whole situation and some of the city governance stuff is already in motion. And the pause is a good thing. But they're not going away yet, and I think it's a little premature to celebrate anything.
Oh, I don't think it's clear how this is all going to play out, but I think that this is just the beginning of this. I don't know what specifically will happen with those diverters, but this is going to have repercussions for city governance, which is as it should be, because I think what's been exposed is that the city government was working for some people and not for others in a way that is not appropriate or good. And I honestly think that that's why Portland Solutions didn't respond to you and kicked it up to the mayor's office, because that is what has become clear, and they didn't really have a good defense for it. And maybe that's why you're not hearing from the mayor, because they don't really have a good answer right now. I mean, I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong about this. And if I am, I will gladly admit that I am. But I just, the whole thing hasn't looked good. It hasn't reflected well in the city. And if this is what will happen to make some change, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
There hasn't emerged a group vocally in town that's like, why are all these bike activists so mad? This is not a big deal. I haven't even heard that. Like,
I feel like that may be happening somewhere, or maybe that's happening in like email listservs that are private or neighborhood groups or whoever.
Yeah, I haven't really seen that emerge. Even the Northwest Examiner, Alan Clausen is like, basically it's a NIMBY newspaper.
Right,
basically,
right.
I don't like a lot of the stuff he does. He's done some really bad stuff in the past that I've actually put on BikePortland and talked about. His article from the BAC was actually pretty straightforward.
Oh, was it?
He did mention that it was stopped by the bicycle lobby.
Oh, the all-powerful bicycle
yes,
lobby.
He literally used that word, which was fun. Thanks, Alan, for doing that.
Yes.
We love being referred to that. But it wasn't, he could have gone a lot more snarky and kind of like, ooh, the city backroom deal with the bike lobby. He could have really leaned in, but he didn't. And I think that speaks to like what you just said about like, this is like, I think just a mistake by the city. And they're going to have to find a way to say it. Like, it's not often that they would apologize. I mean, the Southwest Broadway thing, getting an apology out of that was rare. I don't care if they apologize or not. That's not what I'm looking for. But just they have to figure out a way to wind this down, right? And I think ultimately what's going to happen, it's going to be a public process. They're going to have to just say, okay, do a public process, even though our whole office is set up to not do public process. And then it's going to be the BAC is going to run it, and it'll be they'll do it in tandem with PBOT. There'll be some compromise solution. I think the diverters may get moved a little bit, and I think it's fine if they're moved. And maybe the police can go around them, daylight those intersections, get the lights in.
Daylighting intersections makes such a big difference.
And they'll just put right in the front, which I'm curious they haven't done yet when they talk about their plan. If I was them, I would have said this is a pilot change. They should have used the word pilot and temporary from the get-go. And it's interesting because in the last couple of weeks, as they were trying to throw bones to me to try to get me to tell everybody to just shut up and go away, they were throwing out things like this might be temporary. They actually said that to me in one of the Portland Solutions things. Hey, by the way, Jonathan, just because all your work and stuff, I want you to let you know we're thinking of doing this on a temporary basis. So, hey, pat yourself on the back for getting us to do this on a temporary. But so they've kind of walked away from that a little bit, and they haven't been making that front and center. So say it's going to be a pilot. We're going to make some small changes that are still going to keep the neighborhood greenway vision and values like intact. We're not going to decrease the safety. Anything they do that decreases safety for biking and walking on that street is a non-starter. Should just be. Cannot happen. So, but I think they can also increase the stuff they're interested in, the policing or whatever. There's probably a way to make that happen. Do some changes. Make it a pilot thing, share the plans with the community, the literal drawings, make sure everybody's cool, it's all good, and then do a pilot, and we'll see. We'll go from there. And who knows, maybe it could spur greater relationships between, the police bureau, PMO, and PBOT, and the BAC, because we are all really smart. We all care about stuff that we care about. We're all good at our jobs. Let's work together to actually make the city better.
I mean, a lot of the things all of these groups want is pretty much the same.
Right, exactly.
I mean, there's some places where we're going to be in conflict, but, we don't, like, the city doesn't want people dying on their bikes. The city doesn't want that. It's not like they're doing this because they want to make it worse for us. They're just doing it probably to appease some other group, right? Who wants to be able to drive a little more easily.
We just have different visions of how it should all happen, and like especially like the police bureau.
Okay. Well, the police,
their vision of how that stuff should go is unfortunately, I think still just too clouded.
I take them out of that group of people who I think have the same vision for the city. Let me ask you a question about this. Have you talked to anybody, maybe off the record, from that neighborhood who advocated for removal of that stuff, who said to you, oh yeah, this is what's been going on? Or have you talked to anybody who's been going to these Portland Solutions meetings who's told you more about what's happening in them?
Yeah. One of them was in a story, and he actually came out to the diverter.
Oh, right.
During the rally. Yeah. This guy who was going to the meetings told me that he advocated for taking him out, so he supported the plan. So good. There we have verification that that's how it worked. This guy showed up again, but this wasn't just a random guy off the street. This is a guy who's been deeply involved with his neighborhood association, right? He understands how the levers work and how to pull them, which is right. He's not just some person who showed up. So he advocated for them. But in my conversation, he also acknowledged that he said he's just he's the kind of person who's so frustrated by what's happening on the street. He's kind of sick and tired of people doing things on his street that that he doesn't like.
Right.
And I get that. I don't live down there. I don't experience that the same. And he was like, you know what? I would just love to see if they came out. I'd just love to see if we could just make that stop. He's so desperate.
Yeah,
but
it's
when
a
you
little
get
bit of wishful thinking to think diverter removals would do that.
Right, but you can understand
you
that,
get why he wants something to be different.
If you're frustrated by something and you're in these meetings with like highfalutin city admin and police people in their uniforms saying this will work and solve your problem, and you're frustrated, it does actually. It's like it feels good. You're like, let's just do it. But he also expressed to me how extremely ambivalent he was about it, and how he wishes he doesn't even drive. He wishes that all of his neighborhood was pedestrianized, right? He wishes that he didn't have to, but he felt like forced because of how severe he feels like the problems are. So that wasn't even a resounding endorsement. And it was actually awesome because he came to the diverter rally and had a really animated conversation with all the folks holding the signs about the diverters. So that was really cool that he came out.
Yeah, he was open to talking to people.
Yeah, he was open to talking to people. So, but no, other than that, I haven't heard nobody's emerged to say, hey, Jonathan, I was in the room. Here's what you're getting wrong. Here's the deal. Here's what you're missing. I haven't heard that. So nobody's willing to speak up.
Who are they?
Well, I think eventually it may come out. Maybe it won't. I'm not one to necessarily like try to go into public records and always solve stuff in the end. I'm so focused on getting us the progress that I sometimes don't ever really feel like going retroactively and like figuring out exactly. As long as the outcome is what I'm hoping for, then I kind of will move on to the next thing. But
there's a lot of journalists in this town. Maybe some of them might.
Yeah, maybe.
And other advocates and activists. Maybe some of them want to dig into this stuff.
Yeah, I'm curious what'll happen next in regard to all that. But we'll see. It's been an interesting couple weeks.
It's been super interesting. It's been so interesting to see the intersection of bike infrastructure, advocacy, the new form of city government, and how it's all mashing up.
For sure.
It's been. I mean, it's not been great, but it's sure been fun to watch.
I was thinking about how to frame that because like. I wish we weren't here having to waste all this time and energy defending a couple diverters, but at the same time, it's been really interesting from a job perspective, actually enjoyable for me to actually be able to do all this stuff and to see the community come around and all that. So a little bit of mix.
I mean, there's so many layers to this, and again, it's going to continue to play out over time. It's a bigger story, right? Because it's, as we started out saying, it's not just about the diverters. No. It's about how our city runs.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming over and talking to me about it, Joan.
Thanks for asking me.
It was really fun.
Yeah, I appreciate your time.
Thanks.